I am deeply grateful to the many of you who have stayed with us through it all. For me, it's been a rare privilege to have been able to serve in this position for so long. It's been a front row seat to history. If someone had told me 60 years ago this would be my life, I would have said they were crazy. I will see you along the way. And that's the kind of day it's been this Thursday, September the 1st, for all of us at CTV News.
And that was Lloyd Robertson in his final broadcast, and with his signature, and that's the kind of day it was, which I've been reading so much about Lloyd Robertson today. And of course, they say a lot of the great anchors over history had a sign off like that, and that was his. A lot of people today are remembering Lloyd Robertson. He was a veteran broadcaster, came into our houses for 6 decades in the business. He was 92 years old. Robertson was the chief anchor and senior news editor of CT News until he retired in 2011. One of the people remembering him today is Omar Sachedina, who is the current chief anchor for CTV National News. And he joins me on the line. Good afternoon.
Sue, good afternoon. We will all remember that voice, won't we?
Yeah, absolutely. How are you remembering Lloyd Robertson today?
Well, you know, it was when I found out about the news yesterday. It was just we were all devastated in the newsroom, as much of the country. And after the show, I just took a little bit of time to reflect on his life and his legacy and what he meant to me and what he meant to all of our viewers over the years. And I think one of the things that stands out most to me is that he never forgot who his audience was. And even, you know, the first time I met him here at the cafeteria at CTV, he was somebody who remembered the first names of everybody he met. And this was at, you know, we call it the Niner Diner because the studio is at 9 Channel 9 Court. And so this is what this cafeteria is called. And he would remember personal details about people, ask about their families, and had a genuine interest in everybody he was talking to. And even over the years, too, he would send me emails from time to time, you know, words of encouragement, of reassurance, and sometimes also some constructive criticism. He would say, you know, speed up, slow down, take a breath. And of course, I welcomed him because he was the master. He was the legend. But, you know, when it came from Lloyd, it was never cutting. There was no ill intent. He was just really... He was almost like a grandfather figure who wanted everybody around him to do better. Yeah.
And so, I mean, how did you receive that feedback? You know, I was talking to somebody earlier, Richard Krause, who worked with him, and he said one of the memorable things about Lloyd was his voice. So, you know, I guess that you'd have to take that if he would say talk more slowly or be more authoritative. Or
Absolutely. You know, I was just extremely grateful that he was... you know, even years after he signed off, still, you know, watching the news and watching it religiously. You know, I said, Lloyd, you should be kicking up your feet and having a whiskey and, you know, enjoying life. But I think for him, this was enjoying life. Mm-hmm. You know, he is somebody who was an avid consumer of news. Mm-hmm. He loved it. He breathed it. But he always made sure that the stories reflected the people, right? Mm-hmm. And it goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. He wanted to make sure that the newscast wasn't just about politicians, even though he loved politics and loved the machine of how government worked and he wanted to understand everything. He knew that what was front and center for him is how the policy and government decisions affected the people. And so, you know, if there was a big government decision, his first go-to would be, okay, how does this affect so-and-so in this town or this village, in this city? And that, by the way, is another one of his distinguishing features. I mean, he realized and appreciated the vastness of this country. He realized that this country was not just its big cities, that it was the small communities and the villages and the towns. And he really wanted to make sure that the newscast and the show reflected the country back to the people who were watching it, which was, I think, his magic ultimately. And he was able to do it with such grace and class and fairness and objectivity. And I think the fact that we're seeing tributes from people who, you know, cross all party lines, from all provinces, from all communities across Canada, it just shows you the fact that he was somebody who was able to unite and truly build bridges.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was reading something about him saying exactly that. Like his favorite part of the job was getting into the newsroom at whatever time he got in, looking at the news of the day and thinking, okay, what is it that Canadians need to know? Like, how do I sort of assimilate all this in a way that, that is interesting and relevant to Canadians? And I thought that was a really interesting description of kind of his editorial process.
It absolutely was. I mean, he had this intuitive sense of what Canadians cared about, and that's because he spoke to regular Canadians almost every single day. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to his small town roots in Stratford, Ontario, but he had friends and would visit all parts of the country all the time. And even one of his best friends was the chief political reporter, Craig Oliver, and they would talk all the time too, and the discussions that they would have would be about how do you take these complicated government decisions and make them accessible to the people. So he was, the audience was front and center for him, and despite the fact that he had an illustrious career, and in his own words, you played the clip at the top there, had a front row seat to history. He covered the landing on the moon, 9/11, followed the Berlin Wall. These are major, significant, and seminal moments in our country's history and world history. Yeah. The stories that meant the most to him were the stories of everyday Canadians, right? Yeah. And so, speaking with his daughter yesterday, and she said one of the things that he was most proud of was the coverage of the Terry Fox run.
Oh.
And Terry Fox's attempt in 1980 to run across the country. And it was a cause, obviously, Sue, that he championed throughout his life as well.
Oh, that is so moving. Those are big shoes to fill, Omar. So what do you take forward from Lloyd into your own career?
Absolutely big shoes to fill. And, look, it's not a weight or a responsibility that I think anybody who sits in that chair takes lightly. There's a contract ultimately that you have with the viewer to be fair, to be honest, to be transparent, to be objective. But I think what I will most take away from him is a sense of kindness, is his sense of compassion, grace, and also his absolute sense of humility. I mean, he reached the pinnacles of his craft, but never forgot where he came from. And he made it okay to talk about certain things at a time when people really weren't talking about them. He writes about this in his 2013 memoir, the fact that his mom dealt with mental health issues. Mm. And so I think for a man of his generation to have spoken so openly about causes and subjects like that, which, of course, now thankfully people are speaking about openly, and they are trying to get as much help as possible to the extent that they can. He made it okay to talk about things at a time when it wasn't. He also championed female journalists in the newsroom. Sandy Ronaldo was talking about that earlier today.
Yeah,
he was
a
huge proponent. You did?
Yeah.
And he was a huge proponent of that, making sure there were diverse faces that reflected the country who were on the show. So it just goes back to what I was saying, in terms of reflecting a broadcast that reflects this country is something that he absolutely championed, and he did it in the most down-to-earth, accessible, and humble way possible.
Wonderful. Well, it's really great to hear your perspective. Thank you so much for joining us, Omar.
Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.